What if I told you that the people who anger you most are not enemies, Ingo, but messengers? That every argument, every irritation, every trigger is not about them, but about you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Most people never realize that truth. They believe anger is a reaction to the outside world. They never see that anger is a reflection of their inner one. When someone says something that stings, it's not the words that hurt you. It's the memory they awaken. Something buried deep inside your unconscious, a wound, a shame, a belief, suddenly comes alive again. That's not coincidence, that's communication. Your unconscious is speaking through emotion, and anger is its loudest voice. Jung called this the law of projection. The principle that whatever we refuse to see in ourselves, we will inevitably see in others. You don't see people as they are. You see them as your psyche needs you to. The liar, the manipulator, the arrogant, they all carry fragments of your own unintegrated self. The traits you deny are not gone. They simply wear other faces. And so the world becomes a mirror hall, reflecting back everything you try to avoid within. The people who annoy you most are showing you where your consciousness ends. Let's go deeper. Imagine your mind as a vast mansion. The upper floors, bright, orderly, comfortable, represent your conscious life. That's where you keep the traits you're proud of. Kindness, patience, generosity. But beneath those floors lies a basement, the place you rarely enter. That's where you store the things you reject: envy, rage, vanity, insecurity. Most people lock the door to that basement, but the contents don't disappear, they wait. And when someone appears who embodies what you've buried, they trigger you. They open the door. They make you feel what you refuse to face. That's why you can't stand certain people, because unconsciously they are you. Anger, then, is not failure, it's feedback. It's the psyche trying to complete itself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness. Every emotion, every irritation, every difficult relationship is an invitation to expand your awareness. But the ego doesn't like invitations that come as pain. It fights back. It says, "They made me angry. They disrespected me. They ruined my peace." The ego needs to believe it's right, because being right feels safer than being aware. Yet awareness is the only path to freedom. To never get angry again doesn't mean to suppress emotion. It means to understand emotion. To realize that when anger arises, it's not a command, it's a clue. It's not attack. It's investigate. Ask yourself, what exactly about this person offends me? What feeling do they awaken in me? When have I felt this before? Follow that thread. It will always lead inward. Jung experienced this firsthand during his confrontation with the unconscious. After separating from Freud, his mind began to unravel. He wrote in the Red Book that he felt abandoned by reason. He saw visions, heard voices, battled inner figures that terrified him, but instead of rejecting them, he listened. He realized they were not demons. They were parts of himself, parts that had been denied for too long, and when he faced them, they transformed. The anger turned to clarity. The fear turned to wisdom. The noise became dialogue. That's the alchemy of emotion, the art of turning darkness into understanding. You experience the same process every day, only on a smaller scale. The co-worker who interrupts you, the partner who criticizes you, the stranger online who mocks you. Each one awakens an old echo. A time you felt unseen, unheard, unworthy. The mind reacts as if it's happening again. That's why anger feels so primal, because it is ancient. It's not new pain, it's remembered pain. Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So the question is, how many of your fateful conflicts are really just repetitions? How much of your anger is recycled from the past? Every time you react automatically, you surrender your power to the past version of you. The child, the wounded one, the exiled part. They take control of the wheel. But the moment you notice it, really notice, you reclaim authority. Awareness breaks the cycle. The truth is, no one ever truly makes you angry. They only reveal the anger already inside you. They show you where your boundaries are weak, where your expectations are unconscious, where your worth still depends on others' behavior. That realization doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful. Because if the cause is within, so is the cure. Jung often compared the psyche to a living organism. It strives for balance. When one part is denied, another overcompensates. If you deny your assertiveness, you'll attract people who dominate. If you deny your vulnerability, you'll attract people who abandon. If you deny your desire for freedom, you'll meet people who control. Every person who frustrates you is balancing your inner equation. And the moment you integrate what they represent, they lose power over you. That's why truly peaceful people seem unbothered. It's not apathy, it's integration. They've met their shadows, so the world has nothing left to provoke. You can feel that shift. The next time someone offends you, notice the reaction rise, the heat, the tightening, the urge to fight. Then breathe. Don't resist it, don't justify it, just observe. That's the moment of transmutation. You've turned emotion into awareness, and in that awareness you begin to see the world was never attacking you. It was trying to wake you. Every spiritual tradition speaks of peace, but few explain how to find it. Jung did. He showed that peace is not a reward, it's a result. The result of knowing yourself so deeply that nothing external can define or destroy you. That's the essence of shadow work. Not to become good, but to become whole. Because once you are whole, you stop needing others to complete or correct you. You stop fighting mirrors. And so the world softens, not because people changed, but because you did. You realize that everyone, the loud, the rude, the selfish, the cruel, is fighting their own unconscious war. They are projections, just like you once were. Compassion is born, not from virtue, but from vision. You see the pattern and you smile, because you know. Nothing outside you can hurt what you've already healed within. We think we get angry because of others, but the truth is, we get angry when reality stops obeying us. When people don't act the way we expect, when life doesn't follow the plan we built in secret, when our image of control begins to collapse. Carl Jung said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking." Anger is what happens when the will to power replaces love. It's the ego's last attempt to control what cannot be controlled. The ego is not evil. It's a necessary illusion. It gives us structure, identity, focus, but it also gives us fragility. Because the ego believes that to exist it must win. It must be right, it must be seen, it must be respected, and when any of those things are threatened, it panics. That panic is what you feel as anger. Most people live like puppets of that panic, constantly pulled by invisible strings of validation and fear. One wrong comment, and they collapse. One rejection, and they burn. They spend their entire lives defending an identity that doesn't even exist. Jung wrote, "The smaller the ego, the larger the peace." Because peace is not found in protection, it's found in surrender. But surrender terrifies the ego. It sees surrender as death. and in a sense it is the death of illusion. The moment you realize that control was never yours, you either suffer or awaken. Let's go deeper. Anger is the mask your mind wears to hide fear. Underneath every burst of rage, there's a trembling truth. I feel powerless. I feel unseen. I feel small. Instead of feeling that vulnerability, the ego armors itself with judgment. It says, they're wrong, they're stupid, they're toxic. Judgment becomes protection, control becomes safety, and love becomes war. In the unconscious, this dynamic plays like an ancient script, a drama of domination and submission. You can see it in relationships, in families, in entire nations. The ego always seeks hierarchy, someone to be above, someone to be below. But the soul doesn't want hierarchy, it wants harmony. And until you realize that, you'll keep living in conflict. Because when you try to control others, you're really trying to control your own reflection. Think of someone who constantly irritates you. Maybe they're loud, arrogant, careless. Now ask yourself, what part of me do they awaken? If their arrogance bothers you, perhaps it's your own confidence waiting to be reclaimed. If their carelessness enrages you, maybe it's your own repressed need to relax. If their silence frustrates you, perhaps it mirrors your own fear of speaking truth. Every person who enters your life is a mirror the unconscious uses to show you what's missing. But instead of learning, we project, we blame, we label, we exile. And in doing so, we stay trapped in the very pattern that keeps us reactive. Jung described this process through the archetype of the shadow. The parts of yourself you reject to maintain an image of goodness. The shadow contains your hidden rage, envy, shame, lust, and your buried talents, passions, and power. You repress it because you were taught that these traits are bad. But the psyche doesn't care about morality. It cares about wholeness, and what you repress doesn't vanish. It hides in the basement of your being, feeding off your silence until it breaks through in the form of anger, addiction, or projection. That's why the people who trigger you are so important. They are walking invitations to meet your shadow. Let's imagine two people arguing. On the surface, it's about something simple. Their tone of voice, a forgotten message, a difference of opinion. But underneath there's a war of projections. Each person is fighting not the other, but their own reflection. They're saying, "You never listen," but they mean, "I was never heard." They shout, "You always think you're right," but they mean, "I'm afraid to be wrong." And because neither recognizes the projection, they keep feeding it. The anger grows, the distance deepens, until one of them wakes up, until one of them says, "This anger is not about you, it's about me." That's when consciousness enters the room, and when consciousness enters, conflict dissolves. But let's be honest, that's not easy. It's hard to pause when you're burning. It's hard to breathe when your body feels electric with fury, because anger is biochemical. It floods you with adrenaline, sharpens your focus, narrows your vision to threat and defense. You can't think clearly in that state because you've been hijacked by your ancient brain. But here's the secret Jung understood. The body reacts before the mind, but the soul can still observe. If you can witness your anger without becoming it, you begin to reclaim your power. You go from reaction to realization. And realization changes everything. Let's talk about energy. Anger is raw energy, neither good nor bad. What matters is how you use it. If you suppress it, it turns inward, into resentment, guilt, illness. If you express it unconsciously, it turns outward, into conflict, violence, blame. But if you transmute it, feel it fully without judgment, it becomes clarity. Anger burns illusion. It shows you where you've given your power away. It shows you where you're still asleep. Every time you face anger consciously, you refine your soul. That's why Jung compared individuation to alchemy, the transformation of base matter into gold. The base matter is your reactivity. The gold is your awareness. Let's return to the metaphor of the mirror. When you clean a mirror, you don't destroy the image, you clarify it. When you face anger, you don't destroy yourself. You clarify who you are. Anger becomes sacred when it reveals truth. Ask yourself, what am I trying to protect? What identity feels threatened? What would happen if I didn't react? In that stillness, you'll see something profound. It was never about the person. It was about your attachment to who you think you are. Jung wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Every conflict is one of those disguises. Every trigger is a meeting with yourself. You don't have to fix people. You only have to recognize them. That realization breaks the spell. It's like suddenly waking up in the middle of a dream. The scene continues, but you're free from its control. That's liberation." At this point in Jung's journey, after facing his inner figures in the Red Book, he began to see every human interaction as symbolic. Every argument, every meeting, every attraction was a dialogue between conscious and unconscious forces. He wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. So when someone triggers you, they are not just disturbing your peace, they are participating in your transformation. The pain is not punishment, it's process. The ego believes peace means controlling others. But the self, the deeper center of the psyche, knows that peace comes from integration. You can only be disturbed by what you haven't yet accepted in yourself. The day you fully accept your shadow, you stop projecting it, and when projection ends, conflict ends. That's not repression, it's transcendence. You don't suppress anger. You understand it so deeply that it no longer needs to shout. That's why true spiritual strength looks calm, not because it's emotionless, but because it's whole. Here it's not that nothing hurts, it's that nothing surprises. You've met every demon within, so no demon without can touch you. That's what Jung called the integration of the opposites. The moment when light and dark cease to fight and begin to cooperate. You realize that your anger was never against others. It was your soul trying to wake you up. There is a silence that comes only after the storm, a stillness that isn't absence but mastery. It's not that the world stops provoking you, it's that you no longer need to respond. That's what Jung called individuation, the completion of the inner circle. The moment when you no longer seek approval because you have met the part of yourself that never needed it. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens every time you choose awareness over reaction, every time you breathe instead of burst. Every time you see the wound behind the insult. And the fear behind the face. That is the art of equanimity, the quiet power that no circumstance can shake. Let's begin with a truth few people want to hear. You can't control the world. You never could. But you can transform the way you see it. And when you change perception, you change experience. Because the world doesn't exist out there. It exists through you. Through the lens of your mind, the rhythm of your nervous system, the stories of your soul. Anger is born when your story collides with reality. Equanimity is born when you realize there's no collision, only contrast. Jung taught that the psyche is self-regulating, like nature itself. When you resist what arises, You create tension. When you allow it, you restore flow, so the work is not to eliminate emotion, but to let emotion move through you without taking you hostage. Think of it like standing in the ocean. Waves come, you don't fight them, you float, you trust the rhythm. You trust the water knows where it's going. That's what awareness feels like. That's what mastery feels like. When someone attacks you, your instinct is to fight back, but the self, the deeper consciousness, knows something the ego forgets. That everything you defend is temporary. Your reputation, your opinions, your pride, none of it will survive time. So why lose peace defending what is destined to vanish? That's not humility. That's intelligence. There's a passage in the Red Book where Jung describes speaking with his own soul. He says, "My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I am ready." It's the moment he stopped fighting the world and started listening to the one inside. That's when everything changed, because peace is not found in others' silence. It's found in your own listening. You can't hear the soul if the ego is shouting. And the ego shouts in the language of anger, judgment, and control. When you learn to quiet that voice, a different voice begins to speak, calm, wise, eternal. That voice doesn't argue, it observes. It knows that every soul you meet is carrying its own storm. And sometimes, the most spiritual thing you can do is not to react to it. So how do you live this truth practically? How do you remain unbothered in a world built on noise? You start by remembering 3 things. 1. Every emotion is energy, not identity. You are not your anger. You are the consciousness watching anger. The more you identify with the watcher, the freer you become. When you say, "I am angry," you fuse with the emotion. When you say, "Anger is arising," you create space. That space is freedom. It's the gap between impulse and insight. And in that gap, peace is born. 2. Nothing others do is truly about you. When Jung studied projection, he realized something profound. People never see you, they only see their own reflection through you. Every insult is self-revelation. Every compliment is projection too. So when someone attacks, you can ask, what does this reveal about their inner world? You stop taking things personally. Because you understand they're rarely personal. You stop needing revenge because you see they're already living inside their own punishment, the pain that made them speak that way. That's compassion, not pity but perception. 3. Peace is a discipline, not a mood. It's not something that happens when life is calm. It's something you practice when life is chaos. Jung said that modern people suffer from loss of soul. They've become possessed by outer noise, disconnected from inner voice. To restore that connection, you must train silence. Turn off the endless input. Watch your thoughts like clouds. Let emotion move through without naming it. Eventually you begin to feel something you've never felt before. Chant without the story, pure presence. That's not detachment, it's deep attachment to truth. Let's pause for a moment. Close your eyes. Think of the last time you were truly angry. Feel where that anger lives in your body, chest, throat, stomach. Now imagine sitting with it, not fighting it, just breathing with it. Slowly the edges begin to blur. The fire cools into light. The emotion reveals the message beneath it. I just want to feel safe. I just want to feel heard. I just want to feel seen. That's the hidden heart of anger. It always wants love. And once you understand that, you stop seeing angry people as monsters. You see them as children, afraid, unheard, unloved. Including the child within yourself. When you heal that inner child, the world stops looking like an enemy. You start seeing every provocation as a teacher, every conflict as an initiation. every insult as an invitation to return to yourself. That's what Jung meant when he said the path of the soul is not upward but inward. You don't transcend the world, you see through it. You realize there are no enemies, only mirrors, no battles, only lessons. And the greatest victory is peace. The more you practice awareness, the less the outer world can control you. Because control only works when you forget your own agency. When you remember who you are, an infinite consciousness temporarily playing a human role, no insult can touch you. No loss can define you. No praise can enslave you. You move through the world like water, flowing, adapting, reflecting. You stop fighting waves because you've become the ocean. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To become who you truly are means to meet every part of yourself, even the ones that once made you angry. When you finally see that all anger is misdirected love, you stop wasting it outward. You redirect it inward, into passion, clarity, creation. That's transformation. That's maturity. That's peace. When you reach that point, something subtle but miraculous happens. People stop triggering you, not because they've changed, but because there's nothing left in you to trigger. The mirror has been cleaned. The house is in order. The shadow is no longer an enemy. It's an ally. You still feel emotion, but it flows instead of festering. You still hear criticism, but it lands on awareness instead of ego. And in that awareness you find joy. Not happiness, joy. The kind that doesn't depend on outcomes, because it comes from understanding. At the end of the Red Book, Jung wrote, "I must be alone with my soul. I must enter the dark, so that I may see the light." That's the path you've just walked, through anger, through mirrors, through shadow, back to stillness. Now you see that peace is not a goal. It's your nature uncovered. And once you live from that nature, the world can rage, people can shout, storms can rise, but the center remains unmoved. Because the center is consciousness itself, unshakable, timeless, free.